How's the Joe Flies?
And I'm Leslie from Trips with Tykes.
And welcome back to Disney Deciphered. So it is spring break for a lot of people, and a lot of people are at Disney World. But on today's episode, we are going to Zag, and we're going to talk about some of the other regional theme parks that are out there. This is going to be one of those episodes where if you need it, and you're going to come back to it. And if you don't, well, you can listen and think about how you would much rather be at Disney World than any of these parks. No, I'm just kidding. But that's what we're going to find out today because, Leslie, you are much more versed in theme parks than I am outside of Disney. I still haven't been to Universal yet for a very long time. So I'm just continuously drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. It's hard to quit Disney, but sometimes we do. Sometimes you don't really have a choice. I mean, like a trip to Disney is very expensive, but you want to ride some roller coasters or do something fun with your kids for the day. And then you start looking like, where's the Six Flags or the Cedar Fair Park that's down the road? And that's what we started doing. I mean, we have quite a few near where I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. We have a Cedar Fair Park, California's Great America. We have a Six Flags Park, Discovery Kingdom, all within like a 1 hour's drive. We have the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. We have Gilroy Gardens, which is like a really tiny independent theme park for young kids. And I guess I should put one thing out there, Joe, before we get started. I keep saying theme park, but really these aren't theme parks. Really, these are amusement parks. The only true theme parks I would say are probably Universal, Disney, and maybe a few others. These are meant to, you ride some fun rides, you eat some food, but these aren't truly themed, right?
Legoland, maybe. My
Maybe, yeah.
daughter has been getting a lot of Legoland brochures in the mail, and she's like, "Look, there's buy one get one free." Actually, it's on my desk right here. She left it here, and she's like, "We should go to the one in Florida or in New York or in California because where we live, there's actually a Legoland. They call it a Legoland. Disney don't go to the Legoland in Boston and think it is actually a Legoland. It's like 3 rides and a couple things. I mean, it's great for birthday parties, and it's great if it's raining and you have to kill half a day visiting Boston. But yes, don't consider that. I would not even call that an amusement park.
You went to a Discovery Center, didn't you, Joe?
Yes, yes,
The
but it says the
indoor
word.
in the mall. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ours is a little better than not much better than being in the mall. But we digress. We digress. Yeah, I think when I think about theme park, it's really about the word theme, right? The theming. When you're at Universal, you feel like you've entered Hogwarts. You feel like you're in Hogsmeade. Obviously, when you're in Disney World, you feel like you're transported to all these different lands. Whereas amusement parks, it's more like, ironically, for us, it's amusement parks, I would say, are more about the rides and just enjoying the attractions. But for some reason, even though at theme parks, I only care about the rides, I do care about the theming as well. So let's give a little bit of a lay of the land. I know that there's been a lot of consolidation amongst theme parks recently, but what are these kind of major theme parks out there? And I know we're going to mostly focus on the West Coast since that's where Leslie's been visiting these amusement parks. And I will try to keep remembering to say amusement.
We're going to say theme because it's shorter. But in any event, I mean, this episode is sort of meant to cover, I've already mentioned a couple of them, the Cedar Fair parks, the Six Flags parks. There are a lot of one-off kind of theme parks. I'd say I'd even put maybe like a Dollywood or a Hershey Park in this category, even though I think of those as a little bit more elevated and better at the theming for sure and better operated. They're destinations you might actually travel to. The theme parks I'm thinking about are more drive market. I mean, there are a couple that I would say like a Knott's Berry Farm people are going to fly to potentially and maybe hit on a Disneyland vacation. But yeah, these are the ones that are staffed by the surly college students in the summer, but they really do offer a lot of fun. And as we're going to talk about, they can offer a lot of value. I mean, we've talked about how expensive Disney has gotten, and you're going to be shocked when we get into the pricing a little bit, Joe. But I do think that your Disney skills will transfer to these theme parks, and that's why I think I've enjoyed going to them so much. Is you've developed these finely attuned skills, and then you apply a little bit of that, a little bit of strategy to these regional and local theme parks, and you come out way ahead.
I think that it is great to have, I grew up next to Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey. I had season passes, I don't know how much they cost now. I bet you it hasn't gone up that much. They were only $40 when I was a kid, and this was 25 years ago when I was a teenager, more maybe. I don't know. Time has no meaning anymore. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of great value. Obviously, they make a lot of money off of the food and the concessions and things like that. And I did remember, Leslie, that actually I've been to Six Flags here in Massachusetts quite a few times. In fact, my students are bugging me to go with them on the school trip this year in June. We'll see if they convince me to go. All right. Just this past year, Leslie, you visited 4 of these parks, Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, Knott's Berry Farm, which you go to pretty regularly, Gilroy Gardens, and Carowinds in North Carolina. I'm hoping to maybe go to Carowinds actually in a month when we're visiting my sister-in-law in Charlotte. So that's kind of your experience. And like we've said, you've done a lot more of these amusement parks than I have. If people are thinking of going to visit these amusement parks, what is kind of like the first thing that people need to think about? I mean, I feel like outside of California or even in California, are they mostly just seasonally based?
Yeah, I'd say most of them really are seasonally based. I mean, Knott's Berry Farm is more like a Disneyland. It's open year round, things like that. But a lot of these regional amusement parks, they actually are only open on the weekends, and sometimes they close for a couple of months in the winter, like during the rainy and snowy season. And that's kind of one of the reasons we're doing this episode right now, is a lot of them are opening right now because they've been closed for January and February, and then in March when spring breaks start, that's when they open up. So you really won't find most of these daily, except for maybe in the summer or maybe like the local spring break week. So you're looking at going Saturday and Sunday only, and maybe the occasional Monday holiday or something like that. But I learned this past year because I was actually a season pass holder at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. And there were a couple times, I work from home, I have a flexible schedule, and maybe my kids had a random Friday holiday, and I'm like, oh, we should go use our passes. And we couldn't because it was closed.
Yeah, we complain about these $1,500 magic keys, Leslie, but where is your Six Flags season pass when you really need to have a day off? That's a great point, and I think that brings us into our next point. I do feel like, yes, it only cost me $40 in 1997 or whatever, but I still feel like season passes for these amusement parks are a really great value. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, and I'm guessing that the pricing hasn't changed, that it was like you go twice and you've already paid for the season pass. Is it still like that? And then what kind of value can season passes give to people?
Yeah, it still is like that. The Six Flags pass that I had last year cost me $70 per person, and it included parking, which parking I believe is $40, which is ridiculous because this is like in the suburbs of the Bay Area. Parking should not cost $40. That's more than Disney. But as you say, that's where they make their money, and that's why these season passes can be a really great value. Now, I think it's really important. You really do have to do the math, and a lot of these theme parks have multiple tiers of season passes, just like Disney does. So again, your skills will transfer, and some of the lowest level ones, like maybe they don't include parking. So I have often done the math and seen, well, look, if one person gets the higher level pass and that adult is always going and doing the driving, then we can pay for parking, and then the kids get the cheaper lower level pass. So really just look at the graphs that they have, and they usually have spreadsheets with like check boxes. This pass includes that pass includes something else, and put it in a little spreadsheet and run the math really quickly. But a lot of them do pay for themselves in 2 visits at a lot of these, especially the Cedar Fair and the Six Flags. And sometimes they can even pay for themselves in 1 visit, depending upon all of the extras you're going to be including. Like they include food discounts, often merchandise discounts. And if you are going to go take the family for the day and buy, $23 slices of pizza, then that 20% food discount might save you some real money.
Question for you. I know that this is how Disney annual passes often work. For most of these resorts, I'm sure like there's so many different ones out there. There's not blanket rule, but are you able to, like, let's say you buy a 1-day pass, are you able to go to the ticket booth and say like, hey, can I pay the difference and upgrade this to a seasonal pass?
I've seen that advertised a lot. I've never tried to do it. I mean, I think they're trying to get you in the door and then hook you. So it just sort of depends on the park and the time of year. You'll see a lot more of these promotions, I'd say, in the spring and early summer, because they're trying to get you to sign up for the summer. Or even sometimes you'll see it like during if they have like a Halloween or a Christmas kind of special, they're trying to hook people for the next year. So, but these things really do vary. And I found that a lot of the deals are not advertised well. You either maybe you'll see it on a website, maybe you'll get pushed a Facebook ad, but sometimes it's just being in the park and seeing what they're offering at that moment.
And I know that Sean, my co-host on Miles to Memories, talks about this all the time. I know he has the SeaWorld annual pass that like pays for all the SeaWorlds across, and whatever other theme parks are included, like that brand. I know there's a Six Flags version called Six Flags Plus. Is there a Cedar Point version as well? Are they still separate even though they're all owned by the same company, at least in
Not
2024?
yet. Not yet. So yeah, we should mention that the Six Flags and Cedar Fair are going to be merging, assuming there's not like some antitrust issue that shuts it down. But right now they're operating completely separately. So yeah, there's a Six Flags Plus where you can get a pass that is good for all the Six Flags. So, if you have one close to home and then say you're going to a place where you're going to be likely to go to a Six Flags, and the money might make sense. Like I've thought about it before, like if I'm going to ever go to Six Flags Magic Mountain in Southern California, maybe it's pretty close to where Universal is. So I might do that at some point. So I might consider that. And then Cedar Fair actually has an add-on. So if you have a local Cedar Fair park, you buy your local park's pass and then you add on to it, I think for another $100, the all park passport that's good everywhere. So again, do the math. I think to be worthwhile, without like you're looking at about $100 more, you probably have to be going to at least 2 other parks other than your local park. So you have to really be an amusement park nerd. So it doesn't surprise me that Sean has SeaWorld. And Joe, SeaWorld and Busch Gardens are now the same company. There you go.
Yes. I think I knew that. How dare you call Sean a amusement park nerd? That is exactly what he is, by the way. And all due respect to him, because I really respect that. That makes me think, if you're doing a road trip, like a lot of people this summer, we talked about how we're going to go to the national parks, but people will just do road trips in the summer around the country. If you happen to be swinging by like a couple of these, it's good to look at and see how close these things are, because you never know when you're going to swing by, and then maybe you can get some value there. But definitely do the math. Now, the majority of people are not going to be buying season passes. They're going to be buying one-day tickets, which is, of course, where all these parks make the most of their money. But what are some tips you have about dealing with one-day tickets to some of these smaller amusement parks?
So first and foremost, always buy your ticket online in advance. The gate price at all of these parks is ridiculous. I mean, I think officially the gate price at the Six Flags near me is like $89.99. You do not want to be paying that for what they offer. It's not worth that. So buy online in advance, and you can you can buy the same morning. A lot of times you can, wake up, buy your tickets, and walk out the door. So you can say
your de facto park pass reservation right there.
exactly
Getting it in the morning.
Exactly. So definitely do that. And you can find sometimes a lot of these parks are 40 and $50. So again, very reasonable for a day of fun, even though we should mention these are often shorter days of fun. Sometimes these parks are only open like noon to 5 during the off season, not so much in the summer, but the rest of the year. So something to keep in mind. One thing that I've noticed a lot of the parks have is they have pre-K passes. This is to get the kids hooked. I know a lot of the Cedar Fair parks have this, where you can get young kids who are like 3 and 4 in free with the purchase of an adult pass. So this can be really great, because a lot of these parks actually surprisingly have really great little kids areas, and you wouldn't think of that. But a lot of little kids rides, they're cheap to operate. They're cheap in and of themselves, and they have a lot of these rides that only your toddlers and preschoolers are going to want to ride on, like Looney Tunes sections and Peanuts sections in Cedar Fair parks, Looney Tunes and Six Flags parks. So some of them are actually really good, and in some ways you can get in more rides than you can at Disney even. So you can't as an adult, but your toddler can. And another thing, these parks are really great about military discounts, so if you're eligible for those, can get some great deals there. And then a lot of the season passes we mentioned come with bring a friend tickets. So sometimes this is great for maybe your immediate family buys a pass, but you want to bring a friend for your kids for the day. So that's something to keep in mind. Or you just know somebody and everybody's going on Memorial Day to the same theme park, and a friend can get you in. And one other thing you should look at, Getaway Today, Undercover Tourist, the usual resellers, AAA, they often have discounts for these tickets. Not for all of the smaller theme parks, but some of the middle tier, like Legolands, things like that. You can find those on those websites. And then last but certainly not least, Joe, do you remember the Coke cans that had the discounts for your Six Flags? Do you remember
Leslie, I
that?
was gonna ask, like, you took the question out of my mouth. I was gonna ask you, can you still, because at least here in Boston, we're 2 hours away from a near Six Flags. I have not seen Coke cans that are, I think it was like buy one get one free. But I mean, those Coke cans are what hooked us as 16-year-olds. I'm seeing all these articles about how no teenagers hang out anymore and they all stay at home. Well, we didn't in the 90s because we got these Coke cans and went to Six Flags. So send your teenagers to get Coke cans and to go to Six Flags. But yeah, so the Coke cans still exist. It's still a thing.
I,
I really thought it was dead.
I cannot confirm for sure. I certainly have used them. I did. I used them at our Six Flags over Georgia when I was growing up in the South, and that's what hooked me as well. But I have been told, at least as of a couple of years ago, they were still alive, and you didn't even have to have one of the Coke cans that had the ad on it. You could just take a Coke can. I have not confirmed post COVID whether those discounts are still good, but I will tell you that there are a lot of those kind of discounts floating around in your local area. Like you can find discount coupons, like physical coupons at some, hotels. You know that little section of brochures in the lobby that a lot of hotels have where you can find like discounts. You can find like discounts there. You can find discounts. We actually got one this past year handed out at our son's Catholic school for Gilroy Gardens for like $35 to go to Gilroy Gardens, and they just gave it out at the end, like at the beginning of the school year, and we went down. So like look for things like that. It's very old school. It's not all internet anymore, guys.
Okay, well, a quick search of Reddit has sent me to an article that says that the Six Flags CEO is trying to cut down on the Coke can consumers. But I'm sure that, I agree with you, though. I bet you things like Groupon, Living Social, those things still exist. I'm sure that there are going to be deals for that. I will read for you a funny comment from Reddit, Leslie. If you want to try giving a worker Coke, they'll probably get you in for free. Maybe an 8 ball. Okay, moving on. Moving on.
I don't know where to go from there, Joe.
All right. So, I mean, we're joking about it, but there have been a lot of issues, especially with teenagers at these amusement parks, issues that we do not see at Disney. I don't know if it's just the Disney magic or Disney's magical metal detectors or whatever, but we just have not seen the same issues at Disney. But we see in the news all the time. I think one of the Six Flags just opened up, and like immediately, Leslie you and I were talking about this story about a fight that happened. And then I was reading the article about the fight that happened at that Six Flags. And it was like opening day last year, the exact same thing happened. So there have been these issues. I do think that these amusement parks have been cracking down and bolstering their chaperone policy. What are we looking at these days?
Yeah, I mean, this is just a function of the season passes being cheap. A lot of people would buy them for their teenager and then use it as kind of babysitting for the rest of the year, drop the kids off. So, a lot of these regional theme parks the last couple of years have adopted chaperone policies. And so, there has to be someone, over the age of, I don't know the exact rules, check it for each park, but over the age of 21, if you're under the age of 18, something like that. So, and that doesn't mean you have to have an adult with you the entire time, but there has to be somebody physically within the park who is your chaperone who can be contacted. So, we do let my teenager, when we go to these parks, like roam on her own, especially if she's with friends, but I have to stay in the park for, to be in compliance with the chaperone policy. No, I'm not worried about her starting any fights, but this has been a problem. And it was Six Flags over Georgia, Joe. It was the park that I grew up going to that had the issue. But this has happened at a lot of the parks. We have had issues at our parks here in the Bay Area. They cracked down. A lot of the problems actually surrounded the Halloween haunts that a lot of these theme parks host. And as a result, our local Cedar Fair Park doesn't even have a haunt anymore. They've transitioned to a family-friendly Halloween celebration instead. So, be careful what you wish for, how much you take advantage and supervise your kids, because then some fun stuff does go away that people love if can't have nice things. But yeah, do be aware of the chaperone policy. And I did notice when we went to Carowinds a couple of months ago, I mean, we had to have IDs. They were checking. There was extensive, metal detector scanning and things like that. And as a result, it did feel very safe, but not all the parks are at the same level.
Yeah, on quick glance, Cedar Point's chaperone policy is like highly encouraged for a parent or guardian to stay with a child that's under 18. And Six Flags, I actually am having trouble finding any official policy, but I do think that these are policies that might be coming down the pipeline, or at the very least, they're going to have an emphasis on it. The other thing is with these parks, like you said, it's not only college students staffing it, it's like high school students staffing it too. And they are, I mean, if I was in high school, I wouldn't want to enforce a policy to other high schoolers who could theoretically be older than me. But I think it is important to know that, especially, I do see most of the problems are either at the beginning of the year, if you're Six Flags over Georgia, or during the Halloween nights, because there's a lot more energy.
Yeah, for sure. So this is something to keep an eye on. But generally, I would say, other than like the headlines that scare you away, I've always felt very safe at all of these theme parks. And I've been to many of them over the years. And, maybe don't go on opening day to a park that doesn't have a chaperone policy.
Not in Georgia, at least. We're not.
Don't rag
It's
on
just
Georgia.
the news. We're not hating on Georgia. It's just the news. It's just the news. Okay, so what we care about the most is getting on as many rides as possible. What do queues and lines look like at these amusement parks? Are there cut the line strategies? I think they implement much more expensive, they go with the Universal Express Pass type situation, not the Disney Genie Plus. Almost everyone is going to be tempted to buy it because it's not that expensive pass.
Yes, you're right. All of these theme parks do have these cut the line passes, and they are more expensive. I wouldn't say they're usually Universal Express Pass expensive. I mean, I don't think any of these parks have rides that are sufficient enough to justify, Universal can sometimes be close to $200, I think, if I remember correctly. So they're
No,
not
it can
that
be
expensive.
more than that, like
More than that.
250. Yeah.
Oh, wow. It's gone up since I last checked, but I would plan on, if you want to do these, it's more like approaching $100 to add on these things. And when you're considering that your theme park ticket sometimes can be $35, that's quite the add-on. But they have different names like Fast Lane, Flash Pass, et cetera, et cetera. So just look for those. So you can buy those. And I will say, I've used one of them at Knott's. I was there on a media trip, so that was just fully disclosed, provided to me. But I've never purchased like a full scale one. And the reason is, and this is not advertised, and folks should be aware of this, a lot of these theme parks have single use ones. They have paid lightning lane for these same rides. But this is dynamic. It's based upon, how the ride's operating that day, whether the lines are long, et cetera, et cetera. They turn these on and off. And I have found that most of these are completely not mentioned on the website. And the reason makes sense. They want you to buy the full scale version. They want you to buy the $70 or $90 version. And they don't want to let you know that you can buy for that one ride you really want to ride for $12. So I have used those quite a bit. And those are great, especially when like a line is, 60, 90, 120 minutes long. Is it worth $12 when, the theme park hours are so short? Absolutely, if I really want to get a certain coaster in. So I've used those quite a bit. So be aware of that.
So typically, how will you find those? Is it app-based? Is everything app-based these days, or do you have to go to a ticket booth?
Yeah, they're pretty much app-based. Sometimes there'll be signs as you are entering the ride, like with a QR code, so you can just scan that. So that's how I was aware of them even existing, because they're only advertised in the park. It's odd to me, but also not odd to me, but definitely take advantage of those. A lot of the attractions, the biggest thrill rides, depending upon the configuration, will have single rider lines. So do look out for those. Again, like Disney, there's not like a list necessarily on the website. You just have to figure it out for yourself on the ground. So there's a little more sleuthing that's involved in these parks and figuring out the tips and tricks. And so in that vein, I would say it's really helpful to do some homework for the park that you're visiting specifically. And there's not a lot of great information. I mean, bloggers like me maybe have written about their local theme park and, have a post on Six Flags. I have a post on California's Great America, things like that. But it's hard to find good information about strategies at a lot of these parks, but do the best you can. At least look at the map so you know your way around, download the app. As much as I hate Reddit right now, look at Reddit, because sometimes there's some information there, especially among the roller coaster community. There's kind of like a lot of folks who are really into riding as many coasters around the world as possible. And that community sometimes is really good for helping you figure out strategies because they don't want to wait in those long lines either. So dig in there. It's the geek community. It's awesome. It's awesome.
2 Reddit references in one Disney Deciphered episode. I don't think we've ever had any Reddit references before that. So amazing. We're so young and hip now, Leslie. Question for you. We are constantly panning the My Disney Experience app, which had another update the other day, by the way. So now the menu looks a little bit cleaner. I'm not sure if there's any functional improvement to that, and I'll find out in a couple weeks. But we're always panning the Disney World app. How do you find these apps are for, let's just do Six Flags, the big ones that you've been to? How are the apps? Are they good, like posting wait times? Do those seem accurate? Do you find that you're on your app a lot like you are at Disney World, or how does that kind of affect your touring and your line waiting during the day?
So the apps are not as good as the Disney apps, but you probably weren't expecting that they would be. I mean, I'd say they're adequate for the level of theme park experience that you have. So, they're better than I expected them to be in a lot of ways. I mean, there's mobile ordering on a lot of these apps. So is it as efficient as at Disney? No. Are the operations as good as Disney? Heck no. But, they do have it. They do have the ability to book your, like those one-shot fast lanes or whatever they're called. They do have the ability to book that often on the app. They have maps and some other things like that. I mean, I will say, like last season, there was like 4 weeks that the Six Flags app was completely without a map because they were upgrading it and there was no map on the app at all. So like you should expect there to be hiccups like that.
Got it. Now, what about rope drop strategies, to take a Disney term and apply it to these theme parks? I'm guessing, I would guess it's like maybe even more powerful than at Disney, because since it's a local park, people are typically rolling in later. They haven't spent an entire year's worth of salary on it.
Exactly. That's exactly right. You can get so much done within the first hour, 2, even 3, depending upon when the park is opening. And, I'm used to like wanting to be right there at the front of the crowd and like getting frustrated because like it's really slow scanning people in at these parks and things like that. You can be 5 or 10 or 15 minutes behind the official park opening and still find really short lines for a lot of attractions. So that's definitely the time. I always hit this coaster called Medusa at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, and I have never once waited more than like 5 minutes for it, as long as I'm there within the first half hour of opening.
That's awesome. And then I guess the last thing we should say about these amusement parks that's different than Disney, well, different than historical Disney, maybe not as different these days. I just remember, and I know it's still the case, I would show up with my Coke can in hand, super excited, and then it'll be like Batman is closed for the day or whatever, and these attractions would be closed. Let me be fair to Disney. Usually an attraction isn't randomly closed for an entire day at Disney. There's lots of downtime, but typically every attraction that is going to be closed is announced by Disney months in advance, if not years in advance sometimes. And so at these amusement parks, sometimes you can be disappointed, right? Because you just show up and then something's not open.
Yeah, they do not keep a list updated as to what's going to be closed. You just have to show up and figure out whether the ride is open. And one thing that's really frustrating to me is, I like to be there at Rope Drop and, get in those coasters. And oftentimes half the coasters won't be open at that hour because they don't have the staff at that hour. They're expecting people to come for the evening in the summertime, things like that. And you don't know that. And you just have to be able to pivot. So sometimes the coasters won't be open in the morning, but they will be in the evening. So you just have to roll with it. You get what you pay for when passes cost $35, $40. Even just having a couple coasters open is somewhat reasonable.
So maybe something you don't get what you pay for, the food at these parks?
Yes. So the food at these parks, for the most part, I mean, I shouldn't knock all of them. Legoland's got some good treats like Granny Smith apple fries. Those are really good. But the food at most of these parks is awful. I mean, it's edible, but it's deep fried, it's pizza, it's chicken nuggets, it's, all of that kind of stuff. And you're, like I said, you're going to pay $23 for a slice of pizza. So just kind of be prepared. But that said, if are a season pass holder, I often will go for just a couple of hours maybe get one snack or split a meal with my kids and save some money that way, and eat elsewhere. Like, this is not a park where you're going to have to eat 3 meals like you are at Disney on a single visit. You can probably get away with eating just one and sharing things. So keep that in mind when you're going, but do budget for it, because this is where the parks make their money. And I would say they have all those drink deals, like buy the mug and fill it up. It's not really a good value unless you're going all the time.
All right. Well, this is pretty awesome information. I mean, it does sound like there's a lot of value to be had, especially for the price that you're paying. I know that some of these have water parks included as well. Probably don't have time to talk about it, but I think that's another thing to look at and price compare. Maybe you can get 2 days out of this, especially if you're trying to kill days in the summer with a local park. Leslie, we have Disney do's or don'ts. It's what we normally end with, but I guess today we're ending with Six Flags / Cedar Point conglomerate do's or don'ts.
Sure, sure. So I would say do look out for the special events that are often offered around Halloween and Christmas time. Some of them are really good. I have been to Cedar Fair. A lot of the Cedar Fair parks have something called Winterfest, and I have been to that now at both Carowinds and at California's Great America, and it's really good. I mean, it's not Mickey's Not So Scary level of entertainment and things like that, but it's great. I think I paid $35 to go to it at Carowinds this past winter. Lots of live entertainment, some really good performers. You get to ride all the rides, and then they have a lot of seasonal food as well that you can try. So I think those are great times of year to go. And some of these parks especially really do over deliver for what they have, and I'm surprised it doesn't get more attention.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing all your tips. This is pretty exciting. Hopefully you all enjoyed this and can find some value from it, but we'll be back to our regular Disney content next week. Thank you everybody for listening. And again, Leslie, thank you for sharing your expertise. And other than that, Leslie, thank you for taking the time to talk to me, and I'll see you not letting your teen go to the Halloween nights.
Thanks, Joe.